I am thrilled to share this conversation with you today because I had the pleasure of talking with Carol McAmis, one of my former professors from Ithaca College and now dear friend and fellow neuroscience nerd. Carol is a treasure of information and wisdom and has truly been an inspiration to me as I still continue to learn from her. Today, Carol shares her personal journey and the transformative power of Feldenkrais, which is a method that emphasizes body awareness and learning through movement. We explored how this approach has revolutionized wellness worldwide and discussed the powerful connection between the body and mindset work. Today, we stress the importance of slowing down and being present, and how flexible thinking can really impact our learning process. And if you are really ready to thrive at school, head on over to empowerededucator.com/thrive to access some of the best professional development you have ever received. Empowered Educator is changing the landscape of social emotional learning by focusing on the adults in schools. After all, the well-being of a school is dependent on the well-being of its educators. So it's time to stop surviving and start thriving. Our next cohort begins January 1st, so grab your spot now at empowerededucator.com/thrive. Are you caught in the whirlwind of overwhelming responsibilities? And does the very thought of Monday morning send chills down your spine? Well, it's time to toss those feelings out the window. Welcome to Season 3 of the Take Notes podcast, where you get to make yourself the priority in order to show up as your best self. I'm your host, Jen Rafferty, former music teacher, emotional intelligence practitioner, mom of 2, and founder of Empowered Educator, and I've been where you are. In this season, we're not just talking about surviving, we are diving deep into thriving. Are you ready to take the lead in your life? Well, let's do this. Hello, and welcome back for another episode of Take Notes. I cannot wait to share my guest with you today because she is someone who I've known for a very long, almost 20 years now. And I met Carol McAmis at Ithaca College, where I went to college, and she taught voice and vocal pedagogy and Feldenkrais for musicians. And for 16 years, she was a core faculty member of Ithaca College's seminal Healthy Musician Workshop, a major influence in establishing musicians' wellness programs in colleges and conservatories around the world. And the Ithaca College Feldenkrais for Musicians course that she developed in 1991 was actually one of the first offered for college credit in the nation. She has presented workshops both nationally and internationally, introducing the Feldenkrais Method for such groups as the Feldenkrais Guild of North America, the National Association of Teachers of Singing, the New York State School Music Association, the University of Minnesota, and the Irish World Music Center in Limerick. Carol, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Jennifer. It is always wonderful to sit down and have a chat with you and have a chance to expand our chat to your wonderful embodied educators community is just a real honor. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you. And, Carol has been instrumental actually to the growth of Empowered Educator because at the very beginning, and I have to share this, the very beginning, I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew I didn't want to stay in the classroom anymore, and I wasn't sure what to do. And a couple of weeks before Empowered Educator became a fully formed idea, you and I had a very meaningful, I would say face-to-face, but it was on Zoom. And you were really instrumental in helping me understand what that vision was. So I feel a very full circle moment right now.
It is definitely a full circle moment. And that was such an exciting day for me to watch you light up and go, oh, wait. I'm not going back in the classroom because I'm going to change education. And that was such a wonderful celebratory moment for both of us, for you to take the torch and take it out into the world the way that you do. Really beautiful.
Thank you. And I love that we get to continue having these conversations. And now we get to do this in front of everybody.
Absolutely.
I want to start with, first and foremost, what is Feldenkrais? And particularly, why is it important for everybody? And whether or not you're a musician or not a musician, what is it and why should we care about it?
Well, the Feldenkrais Method is actually named for the gentleman who developed the work to begin with, Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais, who was a man of all talents. Oh gosh, he was a mechanical engineer and scientist. He studied at the Sorbonne and worked at the Curie Institute back in the days when they were doing research on artificial half-life of radiation. So he built a lot of the machines they used to test their theories on. He also helped develop sonar during World War II. He was the first or one of the first black belts in judo in Europe and was the founder of the judo clubs of France. So he had this movement component as part of his life going forward from the time he was a young man. He was an avid sportsman. He's, just a brilliant teacher. He worked with learning disabled students, actually was his first job. So that how we learn and how we grow as human beings was always a central part of his work that he developed for himself. So he typically had a knee injury, like many wounded healers go on to do amazing work in the world because they have had to heal themselves first. So he wrecked his knee back in the late 30s, early 40s. I'm not exactly sure of the date. And the surgery at the time was 50-50. We could help you. Otherwise, you're going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. Well, that wasn't good enough for him. So he went home. He did a lot of experimenting for what he knew about movement. His wife was a pediatrician, and he got interested in how babies learn to walk and talk in the first place when there's no rule book. There's no red pen. There's no reports that have to be sent home to the parent. They just feel their way. They sense their way into how to move. And if you have a remotely nervous system, you're going to learn how to do that too. So it's the most successful learning that any of us do in our lives. And without having to be taught, we teach ourselves. And so he figured out that it's basically just a matter of trial and error. The baby's playing around. I watched my cousin's grandkids go through the process. So we've all watched their children go through the process. So they throw an arm around and a leg around it. It looks like they're just flinging their bodies around. And then all of a sudden it starts to get more intentional. And the next thing you know, they're reaching, they're rolling over, and surprise, they're rolling up to sit. And so this component of surprise in learning is very much built into the ongoing work that we do in the Feldenkrais method. So the idea is that most of us, by the time we get to be 4, 5, 6, or in 3, 4, 5, 6, or in preschool and school, you're starting to have social learning attached to it. And that's important. We have to learn how to function in our lives with other people. No question about it. We have to learn how certain things work, like reading and math and different things like that. But prior to that, there was nonverbal learning. There was just feeling your way into it. And, if I push on my foot and there won't even be language for it, all of a sudden, whoa, that's kind of fun. I kind of roll. Oh, that feels good. Oh, let me try that to the other side. And then pretty soon babies push themselves into rolling to the side. And what he figured out is that we really don't need to stop that when we start our academic, real world, outside world is a better word, outside world education. That we can keep doing this throughout our lives, and we can come back to it at any point during our lives and work in a very simple, structured kind of framework and continue to improve or to retrain things that we may have lost because of injury or surgery or something like that. So the range of the application for the Feldenkrais method is as broad as humanity, really. So I came to the work myself because I'm a singer and I live inside my instrument. I was also a very unathletic child and lots of unfortunate and unhappy experiences around gym class. I'll laugh. So when I switched from being a pianist to being a singer, I was like, I need to know something about how to maintain this instrument. And back in the 1970s and 80s, early 80s, when I started really getting curious about this instrument that I live in, there wasn't a lot of information about how to change something. So here I am, I'm out of shape. I know I need to get in shape. I go to gym class, I get shin splints from the aerobics. I tried dance things and I felt like I had 3 left feet. I don't really, but I thought I did at the time. So eventually I read about the Feldenkrais method, and it was all this lovely stuff about lie on the floor and you're going to do small, gentle movements. The teacher guides you through it. They don't come around and correct you. This is the most liberating thing for a teacher, is to know that you are not responsible for fixing anybody. They are responsible for fixing themselves.
Can you just say that one more time for the people in the back?
Yeah. This is one of the most liberating things for a teacher to understand, is that you're not the one that's fixing them. They need the tools to fix themselves. And this method does that, so that you learn in your bones how you move better. You learn in your bones where you're blocking yourself from moving well, where you're tense. Feldenkrais calls it parasitic muscular involvement, which is just like these little claws hooking in and go. You don't even know that you are doing some of these things. So we'll take a little exercise break here for a second. Everybody interlace your fingers. Put your hands together, interlace your fingers. Notice which thumb is on the top. And now unlace your fingers and relace them with the other thumb on the top. What do you find, Jen?
It is uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. Most people will say that, unless you're ambidextrous, or I've played piano since I was 4 years old. It still feels off balance for me. And we must have these kinds of habits in order to function in the world. If we had to stop and think about where every finger went every time we interlace our fingers like that, and then change it over, it would take, I don't know how many minutes to describe everything that's going on in the movement. So we do slowed down movement when we do a Feldenkrais lesson. Nice, take your time. Give your brain time to process the information. And then once you've done that, and then you do a lot of different variations on that. So theme and variations for musicians is often a way to think about it. So if I'm doing a lesson around interlacing my fingers, that's the theme. And the first theme is the one that you're used to. So you do what you know, and then you start introducing variations. So the first variation would be, you could put the other thumb on the top. Oh, that feels really off kilter. So then if I'm doing something to lift my head or something, and I do it with my fingers in different organization, it's new information. Your brain is very happy. Your brain is going, oh, we're having a real conversation. It's been a long time since she was a baby and we did this. And so to me, that's the most immediately apparent way to talk about the Feldenkrais method, is that it brings you back to the original conversation that you had with yourself around learning how to function in the world.
We get so far away from that so quickly. As you're speaking, and as a singer myself, I have always been my instrument. However, everyone is their instrument, whether you use it for singing or not. Our body is how we are able to do the things in this world. And so we talk a lot about mindset, but unless you're bringing your body along for the ride, you can only get so far, and you really can't even get close to your potential if you are not addressing the fundamental movements and how you operate in this by going around this world in your body. So I feel like as soon as, even before kids start to walk, there is this, you're not doing it right, or you're doing it this way, or there are rules, or the red pens, or the expectations and obligations that you were explaining before. And we kind of shape shift for other people or societal things. And in doing so, we get further and further away from who we are as human beings in this body. So this seemed to be a really natural journey for you to kind of come to this work. But for someone who has slowing down feels really scary, how do we even start that conversation with ourselves?
Oh, well, that's a great question. And I've found that so much the last 10 or 15 years that I've been teaching the Awareness Through Movement, which is a group class lesson in Feldenkrais at Ithaca College. I noticed it was getting harder and harder for the students to slow down. So a lot of times we would make a joke out of it and just make it a more playful kind of experience. I offer them the opportunity, especially a couple of years when I had a lot of people with emotional health, mental health issues. So, they haven't had a really nice experience with their bodies in a really long time. So let's be babies. So we went back to the floor. there's a wonderful little video of the baby going through the steps of learning how to roll over and support herself on her elbow. That's adorable. And in between it has this like directions that you would use in a Feldenkrais class. So they got to see that connection. Everybody's going, ooh, the baby's adorable. Oh, looky there. Isn't that fun? And we had not one meltdown in the entire 7 weeks of the class. Nobody melted down. They were just like, oh, wait, this is really interesting. And this last week, I had a new young lady come in. She's 18, freshman in college. And she came into a little series I'm teaching right now. I got this wonderful email the next day. I haven't felt this calm and relaxed, I don't think ever. This is amazing. And I'm standing up straight, and my voice teacher could see that I was holding my body differently. 1 hour, one class. Amazing. Now, is that going to stick unless she keeps going? Probably not. But she has a taste of something different, another option.
Yes. And that's what it is, right? It's these other options. We go along our lives in autopilot and just defaults, right? Just kind of moving back and forth from the last thing that happened to us. And we don't stop to realize that we have agency in what's happening to us, with us internally, with our internal environment. And unless we take the time to be intentional about it, we're going to miss that and not realize another possibility. And I'll say, for me, as someone who's done work with you before, it truly feels like magic. But you have to kind of get to the point where you're letting go of these ideas of hustle and ideas of what productivity looks like, that actually slowing down and going inside is probably the most productive thing you can do, because what you're doing afterwards is going to be so much more effective.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And this business of taking the time to allow whatever experience you had to process, like you said, is super important. So a really fun and informative for me assignment that I started to do with my classes was to say, okay, you're going to go into practice room. You're going to practice for 5 minutes. And then you're going to put the horn down. You're going to stop singing, and you're going to sit there for 30 seconds. And then you can practice for another 5 minutes. Well, I got all kinds of pushback about that very thing, about I'm not being productive unless I'm absolutely doing something constantly while I'm in the practice room. I'm wasting my time to do this thing. I just couldn't possibly. And then by the end of a week of doing that, they're going, oh, wait a minute. I'm not as frustrated when I left the practice room, because I was like, what is that? Took me, because I hadn't really considered that. I just kind of do that now. And I realized that the brain needs time to process the new information. It does not need a long time necessarily to process a new piece of movement information. 15 to 30 seconds is often plenty. But they were not frustrated because the brain was having that absorption time. So it wasn't like there's so much to stuff and so much to process. And I think that's something that relatively easy to work into a lot of situations. When I was teaching my vocal pedagogy course, we would either take a break and tell a story or try out an exercise or something where there's variety. The brain loves novel stimulation. And so that's another component of working this way with the Feldenkrais work.
Yeah, so it's kind of twofold for teachers too. You know, I'm thinking of a scenario, you're sitting at your computer, lesson planning, grading papers, work for 5-10 minutes, and then just take a 30-second break, you know, and then you show up for the next chunk of that, truly a different person, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, the implications that you have teaching your students, understanding this, you know, I think brain breaks are pretty common now, stretching, and I don't know if teachers utilize them as often as they could. But here, I think we give some weight to what this actually is. This isn't just something that's fun or silly. This is actually helping propel the learning process.
Yes, exactly. And again, it doesn't have to be a really long kind of thing. Do we have time to do a little short exploration?
Yeah, I would be surprised if you didn't throw one of those in. Let's do that. Yeah.
Okay. So everybody who's listening, come to a place. If you're driving the car, do not do this right now, please, because you need to have your attention on the road. But when you get home, you can try this out if you're listening. So come to a place where you're sitting and just gather yourself inside your skin. Feel yourself sitting in the chair. Get in touch with your breathing, light, easy, soft breathing. And now just very slowly and gently, with your eyes closed, tilt your head back as far as it's comfortable. This is not about range of motion or stretching or anything. It's just what's comfortable. And when you get there, stop and open your eyes and just notice what you see on the ceiling. And remember that. That's your little checkpoint. We'll come back to that. Okay, so you can come forward. And now you're going to just very slowly nod your head a little up and back to where you started. And when you get back to where you started, take a little 2 or 3 second pause. So your brain's picking up that one piece of information. This is where we're starting. Okay. And now you're going to do the same thing again. And notice you inhale or exhale as your head tilts back, and then bring it forward again and take a little pause. And then on purpose, we're doing this kind of the short version, but you can expand this as much as you like. So this time, as you go backwards, do the opposite. If you inhaled before, this time exhale when you take your head back. Just notice what's different. There's no right, there's no wrong. It's just noticing, learning to be your own observer. Good. And do that a couple of times, that opposite breathing as you take your head back. Yeah, nice. Okay. And then come back to the neutral position in the center. We're going to just give ourselves a few seconds pause here. And now this time with your eyes open, look in the direction you're taking your head as you tilt your head back. Did you notice you might have moved faster with your eyes open? Yeah, it's our habit. Let's see what else is out there. Let's go look. Good. So come back to the neutral and see if you can go just as slowly with your eyes open as you did with your eyes closed. Yeah, take your time. And you come back to the neutral. And did you notice what you were doing with your breathing, or were you just interested in the speed? If you're just interested in the speed, it's not wrong. That's the new piece of information that you hadn't played with before. So now let's see, as you take your head back at that new tempo of the slower head, do you inhale or exhale spontaneously when you go back? And then what happens as you bring up your head forward again? So we're just giving your brain a chance to check out different options and alternatives for how to do something. Some of these feel like a planned mistake. So here you go. Are you ready?
I'm so ready. I'm in this. We can do this. I don't know about anyone else, but I'd be really happy.
We're having a good time. Okay, that's good. Well, fine, so much. All right. As you bring your head back, instead of looking up in the direction you're going to look down toward your cheekbones. And then when you come back to the center, look up toward your eyebrows. Oh boy. Good. And try that a few times, because this is absolutely something we almost never would do spontaneously. I mean, we might if you were to play around sometimes, but yeah, it's not so easy. Some of you are probably going ding, 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 out here in the listening audience. And that's okay. It's such new information. Your brain is happy to have it done very imperfectly. Mistakes are how we get better. Right?
Yes.
Or how we get better. They are not how we are wrong. And to go to that place in our own body and say, I'm not wrong. This is just more work than I wanted to do, or whatever. Or your brain is doing that for you. So now go back, close your eyes, and now tilt your head back. Are you sitting the same way you were at the beginning? And when you get as far as you can go easily, open your eyes and see if you see further along the ceiling than you did before.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely, right? I imagine most people would say yes to that. And that's how we learned as babies. That is our true learning nature.
Trial and error.
Trial and error. You know, a fancy name for it from the sciences is the stochastic process, which says you have a filter. If I were teaching somebody singing, it could be breathing. And then I have random elements, such as look at an anatomy book, or actually start to notice that you lift your shoulders every time you inhale, or when we breathe with different feelings in our bodies, if we're happy, sad, angry, we're going to inhale differently. So those are all different options that you can pull out and play with a singer, and then put them back into the song and just have them sing the song, and they will be changed. They will be singing their song from a much more embodied, full present place than they were before.
Well, because you're in your body.
Yes, exactly. You're also in your present moment mind and your experience of the now, not worrying about, will they like me, or worrying about, is this good enough? Or the last time I stood up and sang in the school assembly, I did something that embarrassed me and I'm still remembering that. None of those things. You come into the present moment, and that's where the true learning happens.
And even something as simple as doing a breathing exercise or doing something like you just walked us through on a smaller scale can bring you back into your body before maybe you have a difficult conversation with your administrator, or if you're administering a test to your students, if you were to just pause and take a minute to give them the opportunity to get into their body, how much better they'd perform.
Right. Exactly.
Now, that's huge for these students who then, I'm just thinking the implications of this too, contributing to the stories that they form about themselves and the beliefs about themselves of what they can and cannot do, what they're capable of and not capable of. Really, it could be as simple as just get into your body for a minute so you can really show up as your best self. And how would that change the story?
Yeah, exactly. It totally changes everything about the story. And when you work with your body first, where typically most of us, and I had to outgrow all of this myself, of course, we think we're being run by something else. I don't know what we think that something else is, but like our emotions are not ours to control. They just come over us. We don't know how to work with them so that we can be more productive and more effective in our own lives and happier in our own lives, more comfortable in our own lives. We don't know that the way that we're moving is not what we're stuck with. I was a klutzy child, for real. Pigeon toes, tripping all the time, play a game and get knees and couldn't turn a cartwheel to save my life. And I still can't turn a cartwheel.
Me neither.
I can't turn a cartwheel, but I could theoretically keep working on it. I do have the skill set. I know how. I just don't choose to spend my days doing that. But yeah, and a lot of steps that we skipped over as children in motor learning, like I was one that didn't crawl very much, and I was too big a hurry. I just crawled for a little bit, and then I was up and walking and getting on with life at like 9 months or something crazy like that. And along the way, I had a lot of problems with rhythm, with being a musician. And I don't think anybody outside of me really understood that, because I was winning competitions when I was a kid, and playing in recitals and majoring in piano in college and things like that. But inside myself, I always felt a little bit like fake, like there was a strong internal pulse that was there consistently. And once you did the first summer of Feldenkrais training, you go through the whole developmental movement exploration, from rolling your eyes and sucking to turning your head to reaching and rolling and then coming up to sit, crawl, go through all the different aspects of crawling, and eventually coming up to standing and walking. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, some very deep crawling patterns wired in that I had missed. Like I was still doing a lot of homolateral arm swinging. So I would swing right arm, right leg, left arm, left leg. And I had not really developed a cross crawl pattern because I didn't do it for very long. And when that cross crawl wired in, then my internal pulse started to be much more reliable. And then the more work I did like this over the 3.5 years of our training, the more solid I felt in my rhythmic choices.
It was blowing my mind.
Good. I'm glad I'm still doing that. That's wonderful.
You are. It always amazes me that there is just so much we don't know, and there is so much we don't see. And if we really just took the time to slow down and ask the questions that matter, and by that I mean going internally, right? That reflection, that self-discovery in all of the ways, that's truly the way to unlock your limitlessness, for lack of a better word, and that amazes me. I'm so taken by that.
Yeah. Well, it was really fun when I was going through my training. Several of the women actually had babies, and they would bring them to our segment of training. And the next thing you know, somebody's got a baby next to them on the floor. And I'll never forget, one of the men was doing this lesson, and it was you're lying on your back and you roll backwards and throw your feet over your head. And there's this darling little baby who's about 6 weeks old. She wasn't even 6 months. She was still little bitty. And there she was with her head turned to the side, and she's watching everything Frank's doing. And the next thing you know, there, the little feet are going up in the air, and she's starting to do it with him. Oh my gosh. It was just precious. So all of the babies would take class with us and just instinctively be doing what we were struggling hard to learn how to do ourselves. And by the end of 4 years, they were big enough. They were grabbing rollers and putting people on the table and putting the rollers in the right place and starting to give them movement lessons on the table.
Well, they were the experts in that scenario, weren't they?
Clearly, they were. Every once in a while, our trainer would say, shh, shh, everybody quietly lift your head and look over here at what the baby is doing right now, and we learned so much from having all our little teachers in the room with us. It's just fabulous.
I do want to talk about one thing, which I think is important regarding this because it's so new and different, is judgment. That I think a lot of the obstacle that people face to do something like this has to do with judgment. So I know this is something that you've experienced with the people that you've worked with. How do you approach that?
Well, there are a couple of different things that I guess are go-to things for me. One is that Dr. Feldenkrais talked a lot about how we do not train the observer, the disengaged part of ourselves that is the witness to whatever we're doing with our movement or with a piece of academic learning of some kind or other, that we don't teach our children how to go from their internal awareness, and which is so brilliant when they're babies. They're just little neuroplastic geniuses when they're babies. They really are. And to go from that to handing it over and being told by the teacher, you don't know anything and I have the answers. And you have to figure out what my answers are and then give them back to me on a test. And then you'll know you've learned something. There's something really backwards about that and unnatural for us about that. And that's not to say they don't need to learn objective kind of things like what A and B are and C and D, but it's more about how they respond to it. I don't know if you've ever run across John Holt's book, How Children Fail. It's written back pretty much when I was in college, like around 1972, 4, something like that. And he was a math teacher, and he got curious about why some of the kids did well in math and some of the kids did not do well in math. And so he started watching, and we realized that the ones that did not do well had no tolerance for uncertainty, not knowing the answer. They would say anything to get out of the hot seat. So there's that experience of internal judgment. Or it would be that they didn't know how to take time to talk it through for themselves. They didn't know how to do that. And this work is kind of brilliant like this. Middle schoolers love Feldenkrais work. They love it. There they are. They're going through all these humongous changes in their hormones in their bodies and, their social relationship, and everything is changing on them so fast. And when you give them a little space to slow down and just get quiet with themselves and pay attention without any evaluation attached to it, then they start to take a little bit more ownership and be a little bit more objective. And some of it is brain maturity. They have to wait for a certain amount of time. But I find with my college students who are totally indoctrinated into judgment, by the time they get to college, that they've been evaluated since they were 3, most of them when they went to preschool. And they're always worrying about whether they're right or not. And to come into a classroom where the teacher looks at you and says, your answer is the right answer, is astonishing to them. They don't know that. and to find places in your day where the red pen is necessary, and to find places in the day, whether it's in the arts or it's in the sports, or how do I take what I can get them to do and own when they're in the arts and they're creating their own song, their own poem, and I turn them loose and they don't have rules. Well, let's see what comes up. To give a space somewhere in their day where they're not evaluated or being reported on to mom and dad. Well, I think that's super, super important. So my latest class series that I'm just winding up now is called Flexible Brain plus Flexible Body equals Flexible Learning. So it's very simple. You break it down and you say, this is inflexible thinking. I have to get it perfect. I'm no good. This sucks. His favorite college student expression, oh, I'm sucked again. Oh no. My song sounds terrible. All of those kinds of language are inflexible. And they're fear-based or anger-based. You can be angry with yourself and beating yourself up. There's a lot of shame involved in it. And when that happens, what happens to your body? If you're ashamed of something, everybody try being in an ashamed position. And then try being anxious. What happens to you when you're anxious? Body gets really stiff, right? Shame, it bends over. Charlie Brown, when he's having a bad day, he's always bent over with his head forward, right? Yeah, I think there's even a cartoon where she's telling his little sister, she's like, why are you walking like that? And he said, because you can't really get a good bad day going unless you're hunched over like this. That's so true. It's so true. So all of that kind of thinking is going to translate into tension, holding, and discomfort, and eventually pain in the physical body. And then you try to learn on that, and you're stuck. You're really stuck. And especially if you're a kid who's a highly kinesthetic learner and you have to sit in the desk all day. We all know about these things now, but to really think about the implications of it for the kid, for that child's brain. What I found with the learning styles with my singers is when I start using the language that's their preferred style, they sing better immediately. It's like they warmed up and their voices lined up and it's resonant and it's clear. If I tell them to do something like sing from your left elbow and they're highly visual people, it's kind of like they got tied up in knots and strangled. They can't sing. It's amazing to watch. So all of these ways that we know about how people process information, about how we talk to ourselves, all of that translates into difficulty. On the other hand, flexible thinking is, let's see. That was kind of sloppy there. How did I do that? How did I make it sloppy so I can change it? And you've got to learn to work with the mistake to figure out, can I do that on purpose? Do it wrong. So like somebody's playing the piano and they hit a wrong note over and over and over again. They have either a spatial issue or a timing issue of something. And so you say, are you going too high or too low with that note? Oh, gee, I don't know. And then you give them something to pay attention to. You give that rational processing mind something to do that's an effective job instead of standing over there and going, well, there she goes again. It still wasn't perfect. So there's a whole lot of conversations. It's really fun to have conversations with those different parts of yourself. So once you get used to the fact that excellent is better than perfect, that you don't have to do it right, you just have to do it differently. Should make a t-shirt. This is one of my favorite sayings from Dr. Feldenkrais is, don't do it right, do it differently. How many options of ways to do that? How many ways can you make 2 + 2 be 4? You can make it different colors. You can make one number green and one yellow, and it becomes purple on the end or whatever. And you learned a little color theory along the way. What the heck? And play is essential. Play is essential. Babies are just wiggling around. Oh, it feels kind of good to roll this way. Well, that's kind of fun. I remember playing with buzzing a piece of tissue paper on a comb when I was a kid. And that's translated into some interesting teaching voice techniques as I've gone along through my life. It's really fun. So you never know. But the more the brain has pleasure attached to it, and that doesn't have to mean that we're only having fun. it means the pleasure of success. It means the pleasure of achieving something and turning a light on for a skill that your brain was not previously aware of.
Right.
Doing something you never imagined that you could do. So you lead people through all these different kinds of opportunities and experiences. The body is more relaxed because your thinking is more in harmony with listening to what information is coming up from the body to the brain, which then responds. You want your brain to be responding and not to be the commander in chief, right? And so that's another important piece of this whole skill of learning process. So ultimately, the Feldenkrais method is learning how to learn.
Yes. And it's just so fundamental to everything that it is that we do. So we might have touched on this already, but I always ask everyone, what is your dream for the future of education? You know, keeping this work in the forefront and your perspective. What do you want?
What do I want for the future of education? I want teachers to understand this for themselves first and foremost. And I love the work that you're doing because you're helping them do that. That is just amazing. I want, even more than that, I want administrators to understand it. I have colleagues who work in school systems and different coaching programs and things that I do, and they will not work with the children until they've worked with the administrators and then the teachers and then the parent and then the children. So I would love to see a structure like that. It has been done successfully in public schools around the country, and everybody's happier for it. Why not? And then we're not all fighting to be perfect all the time, and mistakes are terrible. So another thing I would love to educate our children on is that the mistake is where the learning edge is.
Yes.
The mistake is where the learning edge is. And once you know what you're doing, the problem is, I see this with my singers all the time. They're constantly doing something and somebody says your ah vowel is and not ah, for instance. And they don't know. This is another thing I learned from Feldenkrais training. Whatever you're doing is the best that your brain and your nervous system and your heart and your soul know how to do in this body in this moment in time. It's the very best, even if the kid is screwing up like crazy in front of you. That's their best option. So my job as the teacher is to give them more options and to give them the tools to be like a scientist who says, oh, what happens if I put an extra drop of this in there? Is it going to blow up in my face, or is it going to be the next Nobel Prize winning discovery? I don't know. It's open. It's open. And we're okay with that risky place, which leads us into having more resilient human beings.
Well, I love that dream. Let's shout that one from the rooftops, please.
Let's do it.
Yes. So, Carol, if people want to learn more about you and the work that you do, how can they get in touch with you?
The best way right now, I'm sort of building a website right now. So the best way to get in touch with me is at my email address, which is multidimensionalsinger@gmail.com. And we'll put that in the information going forward with the video or the audio today. And as an offer for you to learn more about this wonderful work that I do, I have a couple of things for you. One is a link to a TV show that I did a few weeks ago that introduces one of my other projects that's based on the Feldenkrais work that's called the Singer Spa, which is using your voice, your sound, and movement, plus your imagination to take care of yourself. And that's a beautiful combination. I'm very excited about that. So there's a little mini spa sampler that's sort of similar to what we just did today, but you got to go to the beach with this one. And that's really fun. So there's that. We'll give you a link for that. And then also I have an introduction to working with the Feldenkrais method and the voice. So it's sort of built on this flexible brain, body, and voice idea. And we'll give you a link to that video as well if you'd like to learn more.
Fantastic. We'll make sure everything gets in the program notes. And I just can't thank you enough for your time and sharing your talents with us today. This has been a blast.
Well, thank you for having me. I just love this work that has been my pleasure to teach for 35 years now, which is really wonderful. And to see people like you who went through my program in college and spreading it all over the place out in the world, that's just beautiful work that you're doing. So glad to be part of it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And if you like today's episode, make sure you leave a 5-star review, and we will see you next time on Take Notes.
Incredible, right? Together, we can revolutionize the face of education. It's all possible, and it's all here for you right now. Let's keep the conversation going at Empowered Educator Faculty Room on Facebook.